Hi, and welcome to another Recovering Hedonist video. So this is going to be another Christian video today, as you can tell in the title. And I'm talking about the dilemma of eternity. I feel like a lot of time when someone is particularly struggling with depression, there's this sort of view of death that comes alongside depression, where if you're in a particularly bad episode of it, that you view death as a sort of escape from your problems, which of course leads us to the topic of suicide, or at least suicidal ideation, whether it be passive or active. With the struggle of depression, the suicidal thoughts can typically come in, and the thoughts tell you that if you are just to die at your own hand, then your problems won't exist anymore, right? I mean, you will no longer exist and all the pain will just cease. But with being a Christian, I can't view death like that anymore. I don't view death as a full-on escape anymore, because upon death we will have to all meet God and face judgment for what we've done in our life. All the words that we've said, all the actions that we have done have been recorded against us, because the truth is that we are always being watched by God, and nothing that we do is hidden from him. There is no way to trick God, despite some people thinking that they can trick God. So with my return to Christianity, which I might talk about my testimony in a more depth in a video in the future, with my return to Christianity, I am now facing this struggle, this inner tussle with the idea of eternity. It's a weird thing to think about, existing forever. So it's basically like, once we are conceived, when a man and a woman has sex, and there is a conceivement that happens, it's like that soul lives on forever. And that's very hard for me to deal with. There's this sort of comfort, obviously, offered when thinking about the free gift of salvation, and how if we are to accept it, because it is a choice whether or not we accept Christ's sacrifice for us or not, that if we accept that free gift that we are wholly undeserving of, that we are offered a chance into God's kingdom, into heaven. And when we really think about this, think about all the bad things that we have done in our lives, we are completely undeserving of this chance. I know when I think about my past sins in particular, I am incredibly dumbfounded that God would even have love for me after doing such heinous things in life. I don't really feel comfortable going into depth what I mean by that, but I'm sure some of you watching are going to relate to that feeling. And I think diving into that feeling is a great thing to do. If you're new to the Christian faith, or you've been in it for a long time, I think it's good that we feel that guilt. We still need to move on and live our lives, but it's good that we know and accept that we are not like God, not in our natural state. The whole point of being Christian is to try to become more Christ-like, become more like God. With all these things in mind, the topic of eternity offers a dilemma, to someone who doesn't like life on earth? Is it really a gift to live forever? Would it just be more of a gift to die and not have any sort of afterlife? Wouldn't that be better if I'm suffering here? Now, in this moment in particular, even though I typically, with my Christian videos, I speak about a depressed Christian perspective, in this particular moment, I'm doing quite well. However, I like to speak on being a depressed Christian because I have a long, long battle in my life with severe dysthymia, persistent depressive disorder. I'm on antidepressants. Well, one, but I've tried multiple in my life. So I like to talk about Christian topics, like sprinkling in hope, but also being realistic about the suffering and the trials that we are to face on this earth. So sometimes I find myself, when I'm in a bad moment, death doesn't have this sort of sweet escape like it once did when I was really in the horrible trials of depression, especially as a teenager. I have mentioned this in at least one of my other Christian videos, but I would go to bed at night wishing to die, wishing and begging God to take my life. And I'd wake up and I'd be disappointed that he hadn't. And then I would wake up and wish for God to kill me and wish for God to take my life. I just viewed death as this escape, when really death isn't an escape. Well, it is an escape from the body, but the soul cannot be killed unless we are sentenced to hell, unless we choose to not give our lives to Christ. There's a verse that goes along the lines of, don't fear those that can kill the body, but fear the one that can kill the soul. And so some people, I think, view hell as that sweet escape, because when it comes to Revelation, from my understanding of what I've read, those in hell will be judged again, because there's this second judgment that is mentioned in Revelation. And that second judgment is the lake of fire, which not only those people sentenced to hell will be thrown into and utterly destroyed, but also Satan and his demons. So I think some people view that as the better option, because they're like, well, I won't exist anymore if I go that route. When in reality, we should want to go to heaven, because that's the only way that we will be reuniting with God upon our death. And there is only one way to heaven. And I used to be the type of person, like, let's say 2020. Let's go back to 2020, when I was a 20-year-old and I had to move back home due to COVID. I became so interested in New Age spirituality, in Hinduism and Buddhism, but particularly like Hinduism. And I thought that there doesn't need to be one way to heaven. There doesn't need to be. It's just whatever the person decides, like whatever works for them, that's how they get to heaven. Like I thought whatever afterlife a person believes in, that is what will happen to them. That's just too easy. Looking back, it's too accepting. When we really think about the absurdity of life, there has to be objective truth. There has to be a reason that we are here. And I have always, even though I have strayed from God multiple times in my life, I have always held on to this deep core belief that there is a God. And yes, I'm a human. I have my doubts at times. But I don't let those doubts fully get to me. So, on the topic of eternity, My husband recently told me, well, the afterlife is going to be a different type of experience, a different perspective than what we have now. Because I was telling him how the idea of eternity sometimes scares me now, because I used to view death as a sort of escape from all sorts of experience. Despite never being an atheist back then, like I always wanted death to just be the end of everything, even though I always have believed in some sort of afterlife and judgment. But my husband kind of gave me this comfort that time won't feel the same as it does now. I've even seen the question proposed online of, will we be bored in heaven? And if we are to trust the Bible, which we should as followers of Christ, that simply won't be possible to be bored in heaven. I love thinking about heaven when when there are verses about God wiping every tear from someone's eye. My husband and I are currently reading the Gospel according to Luke, and there was this part that I really liked, and he liked it too, but I thought it was funny that he brought it up to me because we're reading separately, and yet kind of the same things are sticking out to us. So it was Luke chapter 6 and halfway into verse 21. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven. And this is the particular part. So I think the idea of eternity scaring us is because we're viewing it through a human lens. We need to trust that what God has in store for us in heaven as believers is good and it will benefit us. And the only other option, that's not a place where I want to go. I've never thought that going to hell was this fun, cool thing. I think a lot of people downplay it because they're not fully thinking about it being true. We are to set our sights on things that are above, not of this world. And that's really difficult because I don't know about you, but I struggle with that. I want to watch TV. I want to watch anime. I want to watch all these new movies. I want to read books that aren't always Christian. And, it's very hard for us because as humans, we want to satisfy not only the flesh, but just our selfish desires. So while the topic of eternity can be quite scary to ponder now, the best way to kind of solve that fear is to believe in Christ Jesus, what he did for us, draw close to him, and try your best to follow his commandments. I personally think that it's better that someone has some sort of fear of the afterlife and facing God, because it shows that in some way that they are humble in some shape or form, compared to someone who holds no fear and no respect, thinking about being face to face with God upon their death. God does not like the proud. God will humble you. If you're not humbled on earth, you will be humbled in his presence when you are judged. And we will all be judged. But we need to have this belief in Jesus in order to be saved. And the Bible says a lot of times, do not fear, do not worry. And so I think that's the message I'm going to leave you with at the end of this video. Be not afraid. Do not worry about it. Just believe in Jesus and know that you cannot be saved without his sacrifice. It is not of your own doing. Draw near to God. And don't worry. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it all the way through, Let me know down below if you have some differing or maybe even similar thoughts about the concept of eternity. Is eternity a dilemma for you? Does it provoke any fear in your spirit to imagine living eternally or suffering eternally? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much. Bye for now.